I'm John Miglosh for the Wisconsin DMA and the International Society for Strategic Marketing. And I'm here with Ed Chenard, and he wrote a great article about data science and some of the problems. And unlike most of the people that I read, he actually had some concrete solutions and concrete observations rather than sort of the theory that you get on most things. So Edward's here with me today, and we're going to have a little chat to undo the damage I did in my little couple of minute overview of his really good article. I saw that you went to St. Norbert's College, which is, actually in Wisconsin. So you have a few little Wisconsin connections, eh?
Yeah. It was a great school. Definitely enjoyed my time there.
So you got a little taste of Wisconsin. They had a data science curriculum, and that's how you became a data scientist. Is that right?
Back in the mid-'90s, I never even heard the phrase data science.
Neither did I.
I studied international business, and that wanted to get into that whole world of building businesses around the world, and they actually had a program that had been around for a few decades versus most of the other schools that were just starting up. Since they had their kinks already worked out, I wanted to go to that program. And it was a good program. After that, became a market analyst for European markets, and spent some time in Spain and the Netherlands, working out there for a while. But doing things like competitive analysis, market trends analysis, product analysis. So I really got started in that analytics field with really that, for me, what I feel is like a good business focus, and then moved on to product management, full product management, not what you often see today with like product owners and so on, which I could go a whole rant on that one for quite a while. But then got into the whole technology aspect of blending analytics and technology, and built out big data science at Best Buy, which was really the big, before that, here in the Twin Cities where I live, there really wasn't anything going on. We really launched it, and then Target, of course, wanted a piece of the action, went over there, helped them with that, then C.H. Robinson, and now work at a small consulting company called Siberian Data, doing pretty much the same thing.
Okay. And are you one of the founders at Siberian?
Yeah, it's really a friend of mine. When I was working at C.H. Robinson, was building that practice out, but I had gone in there. They were doing a succession plan, so I, having been through that in the past, I knew there's always changes, which there has been. So I just said, hey, I'll just sign up for a year, help you guys build this out. And then this came along to, he left his corporate job, and I really wanted to try my hand at consulting, because I have some friends that work in consulting firms, and it always seemed like fun for them. And so
if you like variety, it's variety.
It has its positives and its negatives. I'll say that. The constant travel, obviously, now that I have a small child, that obviously makes things a little different. But I've dealt with companies and gone to places like Springfield, Missouri, which I'd never been to before.
Yeah, Bass Pro.
Bass Pro and O'Reilly Auto Parts. Been out to the Black Hills, helping companies out there, and it's kind of great. I've been out there as a tourist, but to see somebody's corporate office where they got this beautiful view of the Black Hills, I couldn't focus if I had a view like that. But things like that are just great, or just doing your every so month trip to Chicago, and which is something I get to do quite often, or going out to other locations such as we go out to Columbus, or just helping companies here in the Twin Cities, and working on things like IoT, more personalization, and truly getting to that next phase where it's not just I often get called a data scientist, but I tend to correct people and say I don't even consider myself one, because I spend so much time on so many other aspects other than just the algorithms that I think is completely something different that I do.
Well, that was kind of what I wanted to talk about. Was what do you think data science even means?
I really think it's I boiling it down to its core fundamentals of what it really is and what it should be. It's algorithm creation and discovery work within the data. Beyond that, you're really looking at other disciplines. In most cases, are much better suited for the tasks at hand. Uh, there's data engineers, which are much better at managing and building the pipelines of the data. That really shouldn't be a data scientist role. And I can count on my fingers the number of data scientists I run into that could do data engineering just as well as a good engineer. There's plenty of them that claim they can do that, but there's a real difference there. And the same thing when it comes to the strategy aspect. It's become so complex. I spend my day on doing patent research, researching laws, building out roadmaps, having to do presentations, figuring out roadmap alignments for different teams, and really getting down into what's the real business case. Because it's like Henry Ford said, if he had asked customers what they wanted, they would have said a better horse and buggy, not a car. And you're often having to do that type of work, is trying to figure out, I hear you saying this, but what does it really mean? A good case in point is a customer will tell me, I want real time. Well, real time to me is milliseconds. And sometimes, they'll tell me, when I ask them, what does real time really mean to you? And they're like, like 30 minutes. Well,
Yeah,
that's not real time to me.
And I argue that all data is historical, no matter what. No, there is no such thing as real time because it's all historical. Now, some is more recent history and some is older history.
Yeah, and we're talking about if we're dealing with things like algorithms to analyze pricing patterns and stuff, machine learning is awesome for that. It's a really great tool. But when we're talking about human behavior, humans are not logical, and
absolutely
that's where I will often have teams where we need to have social scientists, linguists involved, UX designers. The data scientists, sometimes they feel they can do all that with the data and their algorithms, but no. And, sure, there are some complex algorithms out there that can kind of get close, but they're usually pretty buggy. And it's best to stay away from them if you want to keep your job.
Well, and also I try to explain to people that the more data you have, the more spurious correlations you necessarily will also have.
Yep.
Can't help it.
And
it's part of the game.
It's also that I've found over the last couple of years, I've been spending a lot of time just digging out the biases built into the algorithms by the data scientists and developers. And they'll just say, well, particularly like retailers, it's like, well, this is how I shop and think, and it's like, yeah, but you're not the customer. How do they think? How do they shop? That's all of a sudden when you really need to get those other disciplines involved that really understand the customer's journeys. What are those emotional triggers that get people to buy something? And like Netflix, they'll say, yeah, everybody likes Citizen Kane, but nobody watches it. So it gets a high rating as a good movie. Yeah, but everyone will say, oh, well, yeah, it's a good movie. Why? Well, it's a classic, and everyone says it's a great movie, but I'm not going to sit down and watch it. So, if you go off of concepts like that, there again, it's not very logical, but it makes sense.
Right, and I argue that a lot of times we're better off with longer data set, longer term analysis, because you can at least see trends, and in that short, what I like to propose, if people want real time analysis, is to try to look at it first as longer term trends to see if there's something really there. And then if there's something there, then you can set up triggers in your data as it goes by to to generate other actions.
Yeah, and it really comes down also to making sure that your team understands the data that they're truly looking at. A funny example I have is I hired this young data scientist and asked him to figure out who was one of our best customers. And I said, this is probably going to take you a couple of weeks. And he's like, I'll have it done by the end of the week.
Okay.
So he comes by like later that day and he goes, I figured it out already. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah. This guy Ken Nairobi, he orders a lot of stuff. And I'm like, I was like, let's look at the columns. And so we're going through it, and I was like, did you ever like look at the key of what any of this means? And he's like, oh no, I don't need to. It's like, there's a guy's name Ken, and then Nairobi's probably his last name. I said, or it's the 3-letter country code for Kenya, and the capital is Nairobi. And
if I had a nickel for those guys, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I just had to let him know. It's like, okay, just take your time on this and really figure it out, because he found one and he just saw it repeated over and over again, so he thought he had it figured out. And it was just like, no, it's like, well, it's nice that you figured out the country code, it's the column and the capital, but you didn't figure out the customer.
Yeah, I know, and we spent a lot of time trying not to jump to erroneous conclusions.
Yeah, it's as there's a great guy out there, Rory Sutherland from Ogilvy, and he always says that innovation happens at the fringes, not in the center.
Right.
And it's true. When it comes to algorithm testing, I always like throwing out those really weird things. Like when I was at Best Buy and we were testing out a new algorithm, I'd always be like, what happens if I type in Hello Kitty duct tape, which is an actual product? But it's so out there. Yeah, it's so out there that you're really going to see like how well this algorithm is, because it's such an odd product. You can make it work for like in the latest iPhone and make it look pretty good for most people. But when you throw something really weird out there, that's when you really start to see either the positives of the algorithm or its glaring shortcomings pretty quick.
Yeah, I was watching a live demo once of a kind of a Catalina product, a similar thing, point of purchase. As person's checking out, the checkout person was going to recommend another item. I guess it was something like that. And the guy was buying a pack of cigarettes, and the computer recommended a jar of mayonnaise. I still don't know how that one happened.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
I know, and it was like right there on the screen. And the people really didn't, let's say they had emulsified egg on their face. So I think we're on the same page on that data science is a little more elusive than we think. Is that fair?
So I just think that the definition of what is data scientist and a data scientist has gotten out of hand, where I've seen a lot of them where they try and throw everything under the sun into the definition. Oh, you're a business expert. Engineering. You're an excellent communicator. You know how to code in all these things, all these different platforms. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, well, this person doesn't actually exist. And if they do, they're not really good at a couple of these tasks for sure. They're just okay.
Or as you pointed out, data science does attract a lot of people who enjoy just sitting at a computer plugging away and not dealing with other people. The most highly skilled people I've ever worked with were almost impossible to understand, and they didn't understand that we were trying to sell something in the process.
Yeah, I do think that for me, I think that there needs to be like data engineering, data science, data strategy as as a team for a good data practice. And that data
Yes.
strategist is really the communicator, the business aligner, the one really going out there figuring out how to really communicate what data means to the organization, and leave the data scientists to the algorithm creation. And the ones that are really good at data science, I find that's what they want to do anyways. This friend of mine, earlier when we were chatting, I told you I was having lunch with him. He got started back in the 80s, back when they were really hand coding these algorithms.
Yeah, so did I.
and yeah, he loves just getting in there, plugging away. And we worked together at two companies, and he was like, I was always happy just letting you take care of the rest of it. He's like, just let me plug away, and you can go talk to everybody else. And that's fine, because he did his job great, and he didn't have to go through the stress of having to explain what it means for the P&L to other people, to the executives. I took care of that, and it was a good working relationship. And I do think that's where we need to go, instead of having these fictitious purple squirrel data scientists that don't really exist. Understand it is a team sport, not this superstar
Yes.
concept.
Well, I've always suggested that, even though I seem to have an ability to spot things in data that most of the IT people, the engineering types, don't see, I can look beyond the numbers. But also, don't ask me to make sure it pulled the right names or pulled the right, I'm not careful. Not much at all.
Yeah, it definitely takes that team effort.
Yes, I think it really is, yeah. And I think that may be one of the reasons why they do fail so often. I think companies want to get a superstar, bring them in and say, okay, here's our data, make something beautiful out of it.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, they also don't want to pay them, too, when they do find them.
Right.
That's the other issue I see. And I've dealt with companies. I know what the market rate here is in the Twin Cities, and they'll say, hey, I want data scientists with 10 years of experience, and by the way, it's $120,000 a year we're going to pay them. I'm like, I'm not even going to bother. You're not going to get that person. A lot of them are billing it twice that amount.
Yeah, and they're working at Google or someplace.
Or they're working here in the Twin Cities too. And I mean, there's the nice thing is the Twin Cities.
Yeah, they could be living here.
Yeah, we've got a good community of some good talent that's been here for a long time, and some of them are training up the younger guys.
Well, good. Now, you also mentioned in your article about a client that said they wanted predictive analytics, but what they really wanted probably was prescriptive analytics. And I wonder if you could expand on that a little bit. What you see as the difference there?
Yeah, and that scenario, we're dealing with really weather data and how it impacts that particular organization. And so they were saying, hey, we want to predict the weather, and machine learning is great for that. And as I started to talk with them, it wasn't that they necessarily wanted to predict the weather. They had identified that they had some problems in the past where weather had impacted some of their business, and they wanted to really figure out, what do we do about those times when it happens? So really, that was prescriptive analytics.
Oh, okay.
Being able to say, well, the weather is going to be, there's going to be a snowstorm coming through the Midwest. This is how it's going to impact your business. This is probably what you should do to alleviate any potential delays that might happen, like send things out sooner, or make sure that they're expedited deliveries and things like that. That's really what they were after, is what should we be doing if these events happen in the future. They weren't necessarily really all that curious that hey, there's going to be a snowstorm. That was really just the event that was going to take place. But yeah, they really were looking at actions. That's really where the prescriptive comes into play the most. And I find most organizations, that's truly what they're looking for is prescriptive.
Yes,
But
I think that's right.
predictive,
I think that's much more what business at least is looking for. Yeah.
yeah, and everybody hears predictive because it's a pretty popular buzzword right now. And so they just say, well, that's what I want. But again, that's not necessarily what they want. That's just what they know how to communicate out. And it goes back to that Henry Ford example. Again, if nobody's ever heard of a car before, they're not going to be able to articulate, well, I need a car. They're just going to say, well, give me a better buggy and a faster horse.
Yeah, that's a good illustration. And as the landscape changes, right? I mean, I remember reading in the '60s about in the history of McDonald's, and they were trying to, Ray Kroc was going around trying to get investors, and people were like, well, why would we need another restaurant? People don't eat out that much, you know. Now it's like 50% of meals are eaten outside the home, or maybe even higher now. When you have the capability, sometimes the whole world changes around it. I was talking about 5G and what that might bode for the rest of us. And nobody really knows. You kind of build it and then unforeseen things come to pass.
Well, it's sort of, a good example is Red Bull and Coca-Cola. Red Bull is really the only drink that's been able to take some market share away from Coca-Cola. Now, when they did their research and focus groups, people said, you couldn't even pay me to drink this stuff. It's horrible.
Yeah, it's terrible.
To Red Bull.
Yeah.
And I tried it once and I was like, this is horrible. Thanks, I'll pass. But Red Bull didn't actually, they flipped the context in terms of perception. Instead of going in as a refreshing drink like Pepsi or anything else, they said it's medicinal, it's herbal, it's good for you. Red Bull gives you wings, it's going to give you energy. So now all of a sudden it's anything that's supposed to be healthy, we kind of think, well, it's not really supposed to taste good anyways. Look at cough medicine. They could probably make it taste, like ice cream, but they don't. It all kind of has like, a little bit of a ick taste to it because, well, it's supposed to be good for you. And we just kind of have this subconscious thing that anything that's healthy shouldn't be good.
Well, it's like the Keurig machine. You heard that story where if you took the amount that you pay for those little cups, it's like $50 a pound or some crazy number. It might even be higher than that. You say, who'd pay $50 a pound for coffee when you can get it for $8 a pound at the grocery store, right?
Yeah, but they market it as like, it's like 10 cents for this. So you're like, oh, I could pay $3 at Starbucks or like 10 cents for this little
Exactly.
pot.
They contrasted it with a Starbucks at your home, and you can do each flavor yourself and all that. And I still don't think it makes sense, but my kids love them and they all have them. But it's the context, right?
It's the, like I said, if you flip the context and you change the perception, it's a big impact. Although, when it comes to data science, that actually becomes one of its Achilles heels. Because
that's right. I was just going to say you're arguing against data because there was no data necessarily to support these flips and things.
Yeah, I mean, if you had thought logically about Red Bull, it would not exist today.
Right.
Because if you're creating a drink, it's in a can, it looks like soda. Well, it should be marketed as soda would have been the logical assumption, and nobody would have bought it. So it would have just been another failed product. But you flip it and say, well, it's medicinal, it's good for you. Sort of like these kombuchas out there, which are like, $4 a bottle. And, some of them are tasty. Some of them are tasty. Most of them kind of taste like vinegar, but people are like, oh, well, it's healthy for you. So I'm drinking it. You see people drinking like ginger turmeric kombucha, and it's just like, I don't know. That doesn't really sound that appealing as a refreshing drink. But, hey, they're like, well, it's good for me, so I'm drinking it.
Well, I did my master's in philosophy of science. So I think we're onto something right here. I argued that it was the anomalies that moved science forward, and and so actually we created a system that it tweaks your marketing a little bit. It improves it. We beat whatever we go up against pretty regularly. But what really sets it apart is we look for anomalies. We look for something that's working in a spot that we don't expect, and it's really designed to yield that. And what we've seen is that that's the best source for explosive growth for companies. That everybody wants to just tweak it and not understand it, but if you can figure out if you can spot the unexpected, either in success or failure, that you can make great leaps forward very fast.
Yeah, and that's actually, when it comes to large organizations, and I've worked in a few of them myself, and I can vouch from experience. Unfortunately, they look at anomalies as just sort of something on the fringe, and those are thought to be avoided because if you've got like finance running the show, they don't like anomalies, and they look at that as a negative, and let's just keep it safe in the middle. But often that's why I think these large companies are always going through these, they're rebranding themselves, reshaping themselves, because essentially they're just fighting over that middle ground and not really focusing on where the real action is. And unfortunately, their data science teams are not being really allowed to do that type of anomaly detection and exploitation that they should be allowed to do.
And the vast majority of data will confirm the middle.
Yeah.
If you're looking for confirmation, there's plenty of it anywhere you want to find it.
Yeah. I can tell you my time. I was at Best Buy building out data science and big data during the year of the 3 CEOs. Crazy time, but it was at my advantage because nobody was really paying attention. So we were doing all types of fringe experiments and building algorithms off of it, which made the company a ton of money. You go there today, and that same group doesn't do any of that work. So back then, everyone was, they were saying, hey, we were doing innovative stuff at Best Buy, but they don't say that today. Why? Because they're focusing on the middle and not looking at that innovative space anymore.
It's that thriving on chaos mindset, You take the same people that are out in the field and making breakthrough discoveries, and you put them in the Pentagon, and they become pencil pushers just like everyone else there.
Yeah.
Well, I think this has been really enlightening, and it's a little bit of an experiment for me because, as I said earlier before we got started, I really want to do more extended conversations and interviews. So this is really helpful for me, and I really appreciate you taking the time, Edward.
Yeah, not a problem. Anytime. Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, great. Thanks.